We're back with another weekly video, and in this week's episode, we're talking paddling while pregnant. And I'm not an expert in this field, so I'm going to turn it over to Katie, who is becoming an expert in this field now that she's 7 months pregnant and has been kayaking the whole way through her pregnancy.
So to start off with, I want to say that this is my experience. That I think with whatever sport or activity that you hope to do throughout your pregnancy, it is best to talk to your healthcare team, whether that's your OB, your midwife, just to ensure that you're all on the same page of what you hope your pregnancy will look like. For me, it was to kayak, and so while this is a new experience for me, as this is our first baby on the way, which is really exciting. Um, I've also had lots of amazing women and mothers to look up to prior to this. While I've never actually personally got to paddle with anyone while they were pregnant, I have known friends that did paddle throughout their pregnancy, just to name a few: Emily Jackson, Marianne Sather, Natalie Anderson. So lots of amazing women and paddlers who continued to paddle throughout their pregnancies.
Yeah, the subject matter of paddling while pregnant's not new to me either. There are two incredible fixtures in the southeastern paddling community that paddled through their pregnancy, and those were Maria Noakes and Ann Sontheimer, both again pillars in that community. And so when Katie mentioned that she wanted to paddle through pregnancy, this was not something that I was, unfamiliar with. But one of the big things I wanted to ask is, why did you want to kayak all the way through pregnancy?
For me personally, I have loved kayaking from an early age. I started paddling at the age of 10, really got into it when I was 13, but it's been such a um, fixture in my life. It is something that gives me so much joy to be on the river with amazing people. And so for me specifically, it was something that I knew would bring me great joy throughout. And I thought that was really important to ensure that I got to still do the things that made me happy throughout this pregnancy.
All right. Were there any specific questions that you asked your midwife and health team, like healthcare provider team, prior to starting pregnancy paddling?
Yeah,
Pregnancy paddling.
I think the biggest thing there was just asking if they had any concerns, really. And from everything that they told me, so I talked with my midwife. I've also been seeing a pelvic floor physio, and they're both fairly physically active, have been, into different sports throughout. And so they really didn't have any concerns. They really just told me to obviously stay within my comfort zone. I was able to give them a good background as well as far as what my paddling involved, even though they didn't fully understand everything. They definitely had a good idea being from this area and knowing about the rapids here on the Ottawa.
So speaking of comfort zone, what are some of the changes that you've made to your paddling and to your paddling comfort zones on the water? What are some of the risks that you're willing to take versus the ones you're not willing to take?
Yeah, so for me again specifically that have always been a either freestyle kayaker or big water kayaker, so I really enjoy and feel the most confident when I'm in bigger, deeper water. And so with that, it's been, from the start of my pregnancy, I was mostly been on the Ottawa, and then we went and did about a month down in Columbus, Georgia, and so got to surf some of the waves that are down there. One of them being Good Wave, which is where I'll be competing later this October for the World Championships. So I wanted really to get some time in and train down there, or even just get to surf it and see it before this October. And I knew I needed to do it early enough into the pregnancy as well to ensure that if I did want to kayak while we were down there, that I would be able to. And so, yeah, when I was down there, I was 5 months pregnant, and it felt really good to go kayaking and freestyle specifically. And then since being back here on the Ottawa, again, it's been mostly just big water paddling, which again is well within my comfort zone.
Yeah. Okay. So, what are some of the changes in risk that you're willing to take now that you are paddling pregnant? Do you feel like you're paddling at the peak of your ability, or do you feel like you've scaled it back a little bit?
Yeah, I definitely think that I've toned it back, mostly because everything is a little bit harder. Everything from getting into your kayak to getting out of the kayak, and even just paddling in general, right? As you grow, your abs start to separate a little bit more too. So even just the position of the kayak. But I think biggest thing is knowing what level of kayaking you're at already and making sure that you're paddling within that comfort zone. For me, again, like I said, freestyle and big water was where I am most comfortable. So paddling here on the Ottawa is somewhere where I've had hundreds of laps down the river, and so that was well within my comfort level.
Okay, so you referred to your abs separating and expanding as there have been some physical changes. And so kind of tell us what that experience has been like. Has that changed your stability? Has it changed your ability to move forward and back in the boat? What are some of those physical changes that you felt?
Yeah, I think biggest one is that I've had to make some adjustments to my kayak. First of all, just everything expands, everything grows, including my hips. So, removing hip shims to make it a little bit more comfortable. I've also had to move my seat forward as well, just as my belly has continued to grow, that my center of weight or center of gravity feels a little bit further back in the kayak. So I really wanted to and because even getting forward is a little bit harder. So being able to move my body positioning forward in the kayak has been really helpful.
Yeah. And one of the things that we were discussing, over the past couple of weeks is also getting onto the front of your sit bones. And so, regardless of if you're pregnant or not, this is actually a great thing to practice. And here at the Ottawa Kayak School, we talk about getting forward onto your sit bones all the time because it allows you to crunch forward and bring your body forward independently of pulling your knees to your chest. And what I mean by that is you can practice this in your own boat, even sitting on flat ground. You take your hands, put them down beside your hips, lift your hips off of the bottom of the seat, and then you're going to kind of poke your butt back, getting onto the front of your sit bones. And what you'll notice is that your core will get really tight and it will allow you to kind of bring your body forward, hinging at your hips. But naturally, most of us, especially those of us who work in an office chair a lot, we like to slump and we'll round our lower back. And in doing that, bringing our body forward is a little bit more difficult. And in a kayak, it is much easier to bring your knees to your chest as opposed to crunching forward with your abs in this position. So Katie said that she'd added that into her paddling as well as really focusing on getting onto the front of her sit bones. That way she's not having to put a lot of stress or strain on the middle of her core because the abs in the center are the ones that are separating.
Correct, yeah. Really are luckily your obliques stay pretty strong throughout. But yeah, definitely that front separation. So that's everything from even just when you're getting out of bed or sitting forward. You definitely lose a lot of that core stability right in the center. So like Casey was saying, so a big thing that I'm doing is constantly before any rapids or anything like that, that being ensuring that I'm nice and far forward onto my sit bones, really kind of folding my hips forward. So that way I'm able to keep that body weight forward as well.
So there's also been a few physical changes that have happened. And with those physical changes, you've had to switch some gear up. Tell us what kind of gear that you've had to
I
switch.
have luckily, I have such a fantastic husband that has allowed me to borrow his spray skirt and PFD specifically, just because, again, as I've started to expand, my PFD and spray skirt definitely became too tight pretty quickly on. And I've also had to level up actually in 2 dry suits as well. So usually in a medium, and I'm now currently in an extra large short from level 6.
Yeah, and that was a really fun video to make talking about that piece of equipment because again, leveling up in suits means that traditionally you're getting a longer wingspan or wider wingspan in the arms, and then you're also getting a longer inseam. So there was a lot of extra fabric. And prior to the female specific dry suit that level six makes now, the Freya, you were paddling in a kind of unisex option, which is the Emperor dry suit,
Yeah.
and it was always pretty baggy.
Correct. Yeah, so I definitely don't think that that transition would have been as easy because again, if I was having to go up to a large in a men's dry suit or into a medium or whatnot, that it would be way too long in the arms and in the legs as I'm only 5'4" on a really good day.
Yeah, but she's gonna get taller.
Yeah, I'm
She
going
keeps promising that.
to. I hope so.
Yeah. Um, one of the things that outdoor sports do for a lot of people is it helps you become really autonomous, and that's a great strength for kayakers and just anybody that particularly enjoys outdoor sports. What are some ways that you've had to adjust from being super autonomous and super self-sufficient as a kayaker while paddling pregnant?
Yeah, I've always liked to think that I'm pretty autonomous and even borderline on stubborn. And so with that, that I've always wanted to do or ensure that I am carrying my own kayak, carrying all my own gear, and that I'm loading my boat. Nobody's helping me with any portion of that. And so throughout these last the last several months, anyways, as I've definitely things have gotten harder. Everything from tying tying my river shoes at times, to yeah. So I thankfully have got to surround myself with some really great people, my husband included, and that I'm no longer loading my boat, unloading my boat. And so, really giving yourself grace that it's okay to ask for help, to be able to do the harder portions of it. Because, again, while I'm actually kayaking and I'm sitting in the kayak, I feel great, right? Again, my center of weight or my center of gravity is lower. I feel one with the water. So, that part is really easy for me personally. But it is all the rest of, everything from getting out of the kayak. So I think just knowing that it's okay to ask for help and giving yourself a little bit of, yeah, grace through the process of letting people carry your kayak, and knowing that, surrounding yourself with really good people that want to and encourage and are helpful with that process.
Yeah, so when you're talking about people that are encouraging you, what are some of the ways that they're encouraging you? Like giving tips to people who might have the opportunity to paddle with pregnant paddlers in the future. What are some of those tips that you would give to partners first and then just paddling friends after?
Yeah, I think it comes down again to your own personal paddling skills and what you feel comfortable with. And so again, for me, like I said before, it is that big water style. And so staying on my home river is really what provides me the most comfort. We've had the opportunity to go to a different river that I haven't paddled before. And even though it is, well within my usual kayaking experience, just not knowing all the different eddies and, the put in and the takeout. So things like that made me a little bit more uncomfortable, that I didn't want to necessarily do when I have such a great option of something well within my comfort level here on the Ottawa. And so I think, being able to, yeah, surround yourself with good people, that are encouraging, because it is not a familiar thing to a lot of people, right? Paddling while doing kind of any more adventurous sport. And then obviously whitewater kayaking usually falls well above that for most people's just general understanding. And so being able to paddle with people that are comfortable with you in that current state and are happy to help you as well, like I said, with everything from carrying your kayak to, again, tying your shoes or whatever, whatever it is. So yeah, really, because it's such a, kayaking, I think obviously there's a big portion of it that is the physical side of it, but equally there is a good portion that is the mental side of kayaking as well. And at the end of the day, kayaking, it should be something that brings you happiness. It should be fun. And if it's not fun, then what's the point? And so, with that, ensuring that you are surrounded by good people and people that are encouraging and friends and that support you throughout. So I've been really fortunate that way, that we have a really good group of friends here, whether that was in Columbus, Georgia, or here on the Ottawa.
Okay, so kind of what I gathered from that is one of the big things is communication and being able to identify the things that are, making you nervous and being able to communicate with the group that you're paddling with that, these are things that might be making me nervous. These are things that I need help with. And that communication piece is actually really important for all kayakers, regardless of if you're pregnant or not, because if you fake it till you make it, you're going to eventually get to a place where you're probably not going to have fun on the water. And ultimately, those moments are the things that cause people to leave the sport. And so being able to communicate is, again, just another lesson that is really important to remember to take from this, because it's not important only for pregnant paddlers, but also paddlers in general. So communication is key.
100%.
Yeah. I think the other big thing is as you're kind of moving forward, are you kind of checking in with yourself week after week and just as your body changes and as things continue to change, are you checking in with yourself weekly and adjusting the risk that you're taking and the amount of communication that you're providing to those paddlers that you're paddling with? Or is that changing week in and week out?
Yeah, I think luckily with pregnancy, they just the general, way you track your pregnancy is a weekly check-in, basically. So there's an app even that every week it tells you how big your baby is, how long the baby is, and kind of the different milestones of what is happening as well from the baby's development. So I think being on a weekly check-in is actually such a good thing throughout because I know that every week will be and might be a little bit different based on that as I'm changing and my body's changing, that something might not feel right or things will feel better. And so every week it allows me to really have that check-in as well. And I think for me as well, specifically, that I'm able to keep kayaking consistently. I think there's only been like a 10-day gap between some of my kayaking at most. And so I think that's a really big portion of it is that having those, being able to do it consistently. So that way you're able to really be aware of your body and any changes that are happening. And if something isn't feeling comfortable or good, you're able to, easily back off from that. And so, yeah, the weekly check-ins is definitely really nice, and even then, since throughout the process, like I said, I've had to adjust my boat from almost 1 week to the next as well.
Yeah. What were some of the resources that you used for the paddling specific side of paddling while pregnant? There were two video podcasts that you listened to that
I think
actually gave you a lot of confidence making the decision. What were those?
Yeah, and I think, again, personally, I always knew that I wanted to be able to keep paddling, but it was definitely nice to be able to look into some of the resources that are out there. So one of them is, or I guess two of them, it is a two-part series. Um, and the first part series is from Marianne Sather, who talks about her experience while being pregnant while paddling. And then the part two is Natalie Anderson talking about the postpartum. Um, so the after she had the baby, what that kind of experience was like for her getting back into paddling. So again, getting to listen to these long extended videos of their personal experience definitely allowed me to have a little bit more confidence and bring up my comfortability with myself and with my paddling.
Yeah, and so what we'll do is we'll link the videos down below in the description, and those two videos are by California Watersports Collective, and a great resource if you are considering, having your first child or having another child, and you are a paddler. These are some pretty incredible resources to draw from experience prior to choosing to paddle while pregnant. So I think the last big thing that I want to cover is just the different styles of rolling, because in those videos specifically, both Natalie and Marianne talk about the type of roll that they preferred while they were pregnant. And I want to know, is that the type of roll that you prefer as well?
It's actually different. So both Marianne and Natalie say that they prefer the back deck roll while kayaking. And for me, I've actually, while I can still do a back deck roll, it is definitely not as graceful as it usually is for me in a non-pregnant state. So I actually prefer your standard C to C roll while kayaking.
Okay, and so this is really weird for me to hear. When she mentioned this while we were talking about making this video, traditionally Katie loves the back deck roll. She will actually use the back deck roll more often than a C to C roll, especially here on the Ottawa because it is such a deep river. And so with that, it was a very interesting, I guess decision that she reached when it came to what felt best for her. I wasn't expecting that. And where do you think that I guess that comfort or that feeling of balance comes from?
Yeah, I think luckily we've done a lot of pool sessions throughout the winter time too. So not only are we kayaking on the river, we've also rented the local pool a couple times a month just to be able to practice some of that those flat water moves, or even just get out and go paddling and work on all the different fun things that it's a little bit too cold to wanna spend time upside down, on the river here. As Casey did say, the water is quite cold, and so the pool session really does allow you to work on a great number of things in a very, safe and controlled environment, warm water, and so with that, so I've done, worked on or throughout the process, done both types of roles and hand rolls and whatnot as well. And so I think for me personally, the back deck roll, because I find it's definitely a little bit more with the core at the end, at least the finishing part of the back deck as you sweep forward, that again losing some of that abs core stability or strength, I find doing the back deck roll for me personally was a little bit harder. Where at this stage, and again, maybe it will change as I get a little bit bigger, whether I find the C to C roll getting harder. But at this point, I'm still able to fold forward again by being nice and high on my sit bones to get that my paddle all the way to the surface when doing your classic standard C to C roll.
Okay. Yeah, proud husband moment last night. Katie Bowstalled at 7 months pregnant. Very proud. Very
Good,
proud.
yes.
Yeah. Well, Katie, I really appreciate you answering a lot of these questions. I have one final question for you. We've talked rolling, we've talked skills, and we've talked things that you're comfortable with. The last thing is, what style of kayaking are you preferring as you're out on this big water? We already know that you like big water, but are you enjoying freestyle or river running more?
I think it's mostly been river running since we've been back, mostly because of the time of year and the temperature. That obviously with freestyle, you tend to find yourself upside down more often. And so with river running, I'm able to, stay upright. I think I've only actually had one time where I flipped unintentionally on the river. And again, it was great. I was up instantly right after, so there was no stress that way for anybody, including myself. But I really do prefer the just big water river running. But again, everybody has a little bit different style. Um, and so for Marianne, I think she was still running some waterfalls or small waterfalls up until that point, or running some stuff with a, more creaking style. And so I think it really does come down to what you're comfortable with. And so if you find yourself in this situation, ensuring that you are staying within your comfort level and what makes you happy, because that's really what it comes down to is ensuring that kayaking, whether you're pregnant or not, it should really be about it being a good, enjoyable time on the water.
All right. So that's gonna pretty well wrap this video up. And I just want to thank Katie again for sharing her experience with you. And it's been a lot of fun getting to cheer on and encourage from the sidelines as I've been seeing her paddle. I've really enjoyed the process of this, and we're looking forward to becoming parents and teaching this little one how to kayak eventually as well. But I think this is gonna wrap it up. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.